Hello everyone, I'm Lauren Williams and I'll be discussing work done in collaboration with Tim Brady and LWilliamsBradyStoermer called Category Labels Do Not Improve Working Memory Performance for Ambiguous Shapes. Recent work suggests that visual working memory performance is better for real-world objects than simple features such as color, as well as visually matched but meaningless stimuli such as these scrambled real-world objects. These findings suggest that our working memory system can leverage conceptual information to support working memory performance. Consistent with this view, participants can remember more of these ambiguous Mooney images, which are sometimes perceived as faces and sometimes perceived as meaningless black and white shapes, than scrambled versions of the same images. And these effects are strongest when participants subjectively report seeing more of the images as faces. In these studies, we asked whether providing conceptual information for ambiguous stimuli through verbal category labels can provide a similar working memory advantage. In our first study, we used a set of ambiguous shape silhouettes, which are difficult to recognize as meaningful objects when conceptual information is withheld, but easier to recognize when category labels are provided. This stimulus set allows us to compare working memory performance for the exact same stimulus set, with the only difference being whether or not conceptual information is provided. Participants were asked to memorize 3 ambiguous shape silhouettes from the same object category. On each trial, one group of participants was told to remember these shapes, and the other group was given a verbal category label, such as remember these trees. Following a short delay, participants were given a 2 AFC within category discrimination test. We predicted that receiving category labels would enable participants to resolve the ambiguous incoming visual information and connect it to existing conceptual knowledge, resulting in better working memory performance. Contrary to this prediction, working memory performance did not significantly differ between the group that received the category labels and the group that did not. So in experiment 1, we didn't see a working memory advantage for the group that received the category labels. However, it's possible that these shape silhouettes simply don't have enough visual detail to benefit from the category labels. In order to address this limitation, we used warped photorealistic real-world objects for the subsequent experiments. First, each object was converted to a grayscale image. Next, the objects were warped until the point at which object recognition became difficult. Just like in experiment 1, these objects were difficult to recognize unless a category label was provided. Aside from the stimulus set, experiment 2 was identical to experiment 1. As before, we predicted that receiving a verbal category label would enable participants to better determine which item from the object category they had memorized. However, once again, the label group and the no label group had similar performance on the working memory task. One important consideration is that in experiments 1 and 2, participants were asked to rehearse 4 digits out loud throughout the trial in order to ensure that they weren't verbally rehearsing the working memory items. However, it's possible that the concurrent verbal interference task prevented or discouraged participants from using the verbal category label. In order to address this possibility, experiment 3 was identical to experiment 2, but this time participants did not complete a verbal interference task. Although we expected to see a working memory benefit for the group that received the category labels, we did not see a difference in performance between the 2 groups, and overall working memory performance was very similar to experiments 1 and 2. So far we found that providing verbal category labels does not improve memory for sets of objects that are all from the same category. This suggests that these broad category labels may not allow the items to be memorized with enough additional detail to support a fine-grained within-category discrimination. So next we asked whether providing distinct category labels for each item in the memory display would improve working memory performance. In experiment 4, participants were asked to memorize 3 objects from different categories, in this example, a cookie, a bottle, and a mug. In order to provide a verbal label for each of these objects, the items were presented sequentially rather than simultaneously. We predicted that receiving a distinct verbal label for each object in the memory set would result in better performance for the within-category discrimination task. However, unexpectedly, working memory performance was actually better for the group that did not receive the category labels than the group that did. Although this finding was unexpected, it's broadly consistent with previous research, which found that verbal labels can sometimes cause memory representations to shift toward the category prototype or lead to an over-reliance on verbal labels rather than the visual details of the individual objects. This can lead to a memory cost if a fine-grained discrimination is required at test. Contrary to the subjective effects of meaningfulness observed in previous studies, these studies show that providing verbal category labels to support object recognition at encoding does not appear to improve working memory performance for these ambiguous stimuli. This suggests that category labels do not allow the items to be memorized with enough additional detail to improve within-category discriminability. Thanks for watching my talk. If you have any questions, please stop by my virtual poster on Monday from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern.